Okay, Carrie, on to you.
So welcome to today's event. I'm Kerry Townsend. I am a freelance consultant working with both Marketing Cloud and Salesforce. I've been in the ecosystem for quite a while. I am currently on mat leave, but just joining today for a little bit of human contact, which is nice. So it's great to see so many people here, and we have a great speaker. So I'm really looking forward to that. And Jimson?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Jimson Lee. I'm a Salesforce SME with Cloud Analysts. We primarily focus on Salesforce CDP, Marketing Cloud, and Datorama, but we also do the other cross-cloud as well, Service Cloud communities. We're just happen to be well known for the Marketing Cloud stack, and it's good to have the CDP under our belt as well. We have an exciting talk today, and I'll save that for our next our presenter. Okay, next slide. 1 second. I'm not used to driving. Carrie? Oh, you're muted. I think you're.
There I am. There we go. Clearly, it's been a couple of weeks since I've been on Zoom. So we'll start with some announcements, and then we'll get into the main content. And we're really happy here to have Owen from Salesforce, who's going to be talking to us in a bit more detail about CDP. And coming from Salesforce, he actually has access to the product, which I know only a handful of people potentially will do at this point. So it's a very exciting opportunity to speak to someone who gets to see it firsthand.
Okay, next slide.
Yeah. So this is if you want to connect to us outside of these meetings. So at the moment, we're still mainly meeting online, but if you want to chat to anybody in the group or ask a question in between times, you can join the, you can go onto the Trailblazers community. Oh, I think that. So go onto the Trailblazers community and the collaboration groups on there and find us on there. You can also, now that Trailhead is online, you can actually access the community through Trailhead Go. So you can chat to community members while you're on the move. We also record these sessions and make them available on YouTube. So you'll be able to see pretty much all the sessions we've done in the last year available from our YouTube channel, which is SFMC London YouTube.
Next slide.
Lovely. Yeah. So this is just to give you a heads up of the next few meetings that we're proposing to have. Now, sometimes these dates move around depending on speakers and availability, but we'll be targeting the 11th of November and also the 9th of December, and typically the one in December, we like to do sort of more of an informal sort of chat Christmas party. So it's a great time to sort of round up what we've done during the year and also find out what you've been doing. And then in terms of the other groups, now typically there's there are admin and dev groups. The admin group is actually meeting in person tonight. So they've already started having group live meetings. And I think the dev group are actually meeting slightly later this month as well for the first time in person. So if you are in London and you're able to travel to in-person events, then keep an eye out for those.
Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. My mouse is
yeah cool. And this, as many of you know, I'm one of the co-organizers of London's Calling, and I think this slide will appear for most of our meetings now until June next year. So we are hoping to have this event back in person. It will be at the brewery in London, and I know that many people wanted to attend the in-person event that we had when in 2020, but unfortunately we had to go online. So we are very excited to potentially be back in person. So look out for announcements coming from that, particularly to do with Marketing Cloud. When we open the call for speakers, I would love to see some people who join this group actually submit talks and potentially increase the amount of Marketing Cloud and just marketing automation content that we can have at the event. Because it's a community-led event and we are driven by what people from the community actually submit as talking sessions, it's really helpful if we get as many people as possible to submit, because then we get a wide variety. And those can be anything from beginner topics all the way through to advanced. If you have been learning the tool yourself or potentially working in it for years, you will have some knowledge or understanding that other community members will benefit from. So if you're interested in having or trying out speaking, even if it is for the first time, be sure to look out for that call for speakers.
Okay, great. I think I just want to spend 5 minutes quickly on some release notes. So I think the August one, for those who missed it last month, I think the most talked about highlight was the self-serve SSL certificates. I think anyone here who has worked on a marketing cloud project and you forget, or the client forgets to order SSL, or they don't know yet you need 2, not 1. It's good and really nice to see that it's self-service now. You don't have to wait 4 to 8 weeks from Salesforce anymore. So this is really long overdue. And I think anyone who has an org or is working on Marketing Cloud is happy to see this. Next slide is, so we got a bit of overlap here because the CDP is part of the Salesforce core stack, and we get 3 releases a year, as we all know, winter, spring, and summer. And the Marketing Cloud is 5 times a year, and they're not always in sync. So you're potentially looking at 8 different releases every year to keep up to. Now, I haven't covered these yet. The CDP just got released now, like this morning on my org, and might show some stuff on it later, but for now we'll focus on CDP as a general. And also the October release notes are coming up. I believe the video is next week. So just use these 2 links, or just look at Trailblazer, when your release notes are. So these are some exciting features on these 2 sets of release notes. And last but not least, I think today, as we know, Salesforce CDP, if you attended Dreamforce, CDP was all over the place. For those who were around last year, it was known as Customer 360 Audiences, and now it's called CDP, and not to be confused with Salesforce Customer 360 or Salesforce Digital Customer 360, different product lines, and that's a whole different ballgame. But for now, we're going to focus on CDP as we know it for Marketing Cloud. And further ado, so I met Owen Daniels about 5 years ago, and he's one of the top solution engineers at Salesforce. And I think today we're going to have a good presentation on CDP. We're going to talk about all the reasons why CDP is important, why you can't buy it anymore. You can't buy Audience Builder anymore, so you're using CDP. You're forced to use CDP, and there's a lot of pros and benefits with it. So without further ado, Owen Daniels, lead solution engineer from Salesforce. Owen, on to you.
Perfect. Would you mind just stopping sharing your screen?
Yeah, it's
Wonderful.
all yours now.
Great. So hopefully everybody can now see my screen. Jimson, can you just confirm?
Yeah, confirm.
Perfect.
Yeah, people are still joining late, so yes, we can see your screen.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So my name's Owen Daniels. I'm a Marketing Cloud solution engineer at Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce coming up on 6 years now, and all of that time in the Marketing Cloud. And as Jimson says, we worked together on a customer implementation probably about 5.5 years ago now. And in that time, I've moved to supporting the emerging markets and have recently come back into the UK team. Nice to virtually meet everybody, and hopefully you'll get a lot of value out of today with this overview of CDP. Just get my place in the right place. So this is what I'm going to cover today. So typically this is the sort of Salesforce view in terms of the challenges that the industry faces, our point of view, particularly point of view being important when it comes to CDP, because it's a buzzword with a lot of sort of differences of opinion as to what constitutes a CDP. Then we'll take a quick look at the capabilities. I wanted to do a bit of like a zoom, if you like, on the data bundles, because there's been a good amount of progress with that on the latest release, and then finally take a quick look at what has been released on the roadmap as part of this this particular release, which is sort of in progress at the moment and should be finished for all customers this weekend. Okay, so before I get started, this is obviously a view at the Marketing Cloud as a whole, and this is sort of a zoom in, if you like, onto so within Salesforce Customer 360. This is a zoom in on Marketing Cloud 360, and we are effectively today. We are today looking at this part here, the customer data platform. Okay. We will touch as we go through on some of these other areas and how CDP impacts on those areas, but for the purposes of today, we're focusing primarily there. So let's get started with the challenges then. This is not new to anybody, I'm sure. The world has changed effectively, and there's no going back now. We used to talk about the proliferation of data and devices. That has moved on a speed even further now, because we're all digital first customers as a result of all the lockdowns and so on that have taken place. Companies have shifted much more now to that direct to consumer business model, and also we're now in that work from anywhere mode. So anybody who paid attention at Dreamforce will have heard that a lot. One of the main things about Salesforce now is that ability to help our customers work from anywhere and customer success from anywhere. So in order to succeed, brands need to differentiate through their digital experiences, and they need to make those feel as personal and as human as possible. Okay, but that's really difficult, and certainly doing it for a small number of customers is difficult, but doing it at scale is incredibly difficult. And so the primary thing keeping customers from receiving that personalization across all the channels and enterprises from delivering it is, that legacy data that's sitting in all those different silos around the business. And we're also in a world where, because of that siloed data, customers have multiple IDs as they move between those channels in real time. And so and also things like new privacy legislation and changes to rules about data collections, that has had a big impact. So data, when customers think about data, unfortunately, a lot of their data is static, sat in those different silos, but relationships are not static. So effectively, they need to think about how they move that along and how they start to mobilize that data, and so it needs to evolve to allow them to paint a complete picture of all of their individuals and all of their customers, and that's what allows, once you do that, once you have that data, in that single view, that's what allows you to humanize those interactions that you have with the customer. So understanding exactly where somebody is on that journey. And if we take a look at some of the problems that are tied to this, so taking a look at this screen, as I mentioned, lots of different data. So in your POS data, you don't necessarily have a name for a lot of the customers, and then for some of those customers you will have names and emails and so on, and a lot of those times that some of those unknown customers may be people that you would know if you'd been able to capture their data, and so you may already have information about those people. You have loyalty data, a lot of new devices now when it comes to checkout, so the ability to do a one-click checkout as opposed to logging into your profile and doing it that way. All of that creates different types of data and different information within a profile depending on how somebody has filled that out over time, and all of this will create complexity for people. There's also different the unintentional possibility of creating duplicates within your data, stemming from all of these different all of these different sort of sources of data. And so it's a real challenge for businesses as a whole, but particularly for marketers who are reliant on other teams to be able to bring all of that data together and actually make it actionable and to be able to use it for what it should be used for. So that brings us on to our point of view on the CDP as a whole. So as I mentioned, CDP is a buzzword. It's something that you speak to different people, they will have a different view of what a CDP should be. We effectively studied over 400 RFPs that were sort of brought to us and that we tendered for. And we sort of studied it in detail and we broke it down. And we noticed that, in general, customers' data requirements can be broken down into 5 main categories. So the first one is velocity, and that's the ability to ingest data at different speeds from disparate data systems. Variety, so obviously there's a large number of formats, and we need to be able to map all of those formats into a single model. The veracity of the data, which is effectively the ability to match and deduplicate and create a rich, persistent profile. The volume, so we're talking about B2C, not only B2C, but mainly B2C, and that means that the infrastructure has to be built for scale and allow for big data processing. And then finally, the value. Why are those other 4 areas important? Well, it's about generating and deriving value from the data. So being able to activate that data across all of the different touch points enterprise-wide where a customer may come into contact with the business, with the brand. Okay, so I have a bit of a builder slide now where this is how we sort of see those areas and how we've mapped our platform as a whole to those 5 areas when it comes to data. And so obviously starting off, that is lots of different sources, lots of different areas where data is stored in the organization. And we need to be able to ingest that in a number of different ways. So for large imports, we have the ability to ingest those in a batch fashion, and that can be incredibly large files which we want to be able to process at speed. And then there's also those the more real-time data that you'll need access to that we want to be able to bring in as well. And all of the time, we need to be able to handle that data and match that data. One of the main problems I talked about this in the variety is that they all have different formats and they all will have different ways of representing the same type of data. And so we have implemented in CDP the cloud information model, which is something that we've worked on with Amazon and Google to create this model, which means that going forward, it's incredibly easy for for marketers really and your customers to be able to work with that data, because from now on, the hope is that they will always see data in the same format, regardless of where it's come from. And part of the CDP is that ability to transform the data and map it to that model. Then comes around, effectively matching up that data and creating those rich, persistent profiles that I talked about. So that's being able to firstly match and reconcile records that may appear slightly different, but using things like fuzzy matching and so on, being able to understand that is data that should be applied to the same contact record, or those are actually 2 distinct customers. And that, in doing that, that's where we're able to create that single source of truth. Then obviously it is the volume, and so we have chosen to build this on Hyperforce. Hopefully you've all seen around and pre-Dreamforce the announcements on things like Hyperforce, but obviously that is our platform built for scale, and then when we think of it that way, it's built to enable marketers to do the complex without having to get into the detail. And so that's the clicks not code mantra that we have. And then finally, the value. This is where the other parts of the Marketing Cloud stack come into play. So messaging and journeys, where we're able to activate in the typical outbound channels, email, mobile, and using Journey Builder and so on. Advertising. So that's, through Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, using Advertising Studio, and potentially the ability to enrich your data through any of the apps on the AppExchange. Real-time interactions using Interaction Studio, so that ability to personalize the experience based on all of this massive data that we've accumulated, but be able to do that in real time across any environment. And those are your online environments as well as your offline environments. So things like call centers, point of sales in store, that kind of thing. And then finally, analytics, the ability to measure and analyze what's going on across, across your business from a marketing point of view, using effectively things like Datorama, but also when you want to get into the raw data, then things like Tableau as well. This is a bit of a zoomed out view. I'm not going to go through this in any detail, but this is just a nice view showing, at a higher level, something that, customers will probably appreciate. So not going into too much detail, how we get the data in. So, coming over on the left-hand side, how we get all of the data in, we build that single source of truth. And for you as partners, it's important to know, how we can access that single source of truth. So of course, we have the ability to activate data and to take in data using the pre-built connectors. But there's also other ways, when you require to put data in, or when you need to take data out in other, into other platforms. And then obviously that ability to respond and to interact with your customers across any channel. And then finally, the ability to take all of that data, and everything that we learn, and feed it back in to the source so that we can start that process again. Okay, so without further ado, I'll take a quick look then at the main capabilities. So if you think of all of those things that we've just seen, we can sort of drill it down into a number of different areas. So the first one is unify and identify. So that's getting all of your data in to a single place, and identifying and reconciling all of those customer records that you have. Then it's being able to segment and enrich that data. So very easy for marketers to slice and dice and get to the populations and the audiences that they need. The ability to manage consent, so making sure that we stick to those guidelines, the governance guidelines that we have, and things like GDPR. Being able to activate the data, so actually make it actionable and derive value from it, and then the ability to visualize and understand what's going on so that we can make better decisions going forward. So first thing is really about the data. So it's how we can get all of that data in. And I've talked about bundles, and I'm going to take a closer look at those in a moment. But bundles effectively are where we have pre-built connectors, and the majority of these at the moment are for the Salesforce stack. So things like Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Sales and Service. And being able to bring those data in, that data in, and map it to that cloud information model that I talked about. So there's a representation there on the right hand side. This can be done for any data source that you have. So we're going to take the data, map it to that cloud information model. But where you have a bundle, this is already done for you. You just need to select what data you're looking for, and it will be done. And then obviously, as part of that process, we can apply any cleansing and transformation that needs to be done, so that effectively, as soon as that data hits the model, it is good to go. And incidentally, marketers can work with the model while all of that pre-work is being done. They won't necessarily get results, but they can work with that while it's being done. Then obviously the identity stitching. So I won't talk too much about this because I've already sort of mentioned it, but the ability to understand that these different contact records make up the same individual, so that we're not talking to the same person twice. And then effectively putting all of that data then in the hands of the marketer. And this is the real essence of what CDP is about. You guys may well be interested in that first part where, you know, the work to actually get to this point, but your customers will almost certainly be interested in this part, which is clicks, not code. How do I create my segments fast, and, you know, use it through large volumes of data, and potentially the ability to use things like Einstein, artificial intelligence, to help me get the most out of that data. Okay. And so if we look at some of the areas of differentiation, so the first one is the platform, as is always the case with Salesforce, having all of your sales, service, commerce, and marketing in one single place and easy access to that data, then putting it in the hands of marketers, clicks, not code. So making it incredibly easy for people to work with. And, you know, the fact that we have a fairly open platform, which allows you to extend and enrich using, you know, either apps that you've developed yourself within your companies, or, you know, packages that you've developed, or using the power of the network to use some of those within, you know, from the AppExchange. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just switch ever so slightly and go into the platform so that we can see some of those data bundles. Now, as I mentioned, there is a release that is in the process of going out. So in the NTO environment, for those that have access to NTO, you will be able to see some of this new functionality trickling through. So when we go in to create a new data stream, we're presented with a number of options. Okay, so this being an internal demonstration environment, there are some areas that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see when you're a customer, and that's mainly because they've been done for demonstration purposes. But we have Marketing Cloud, so when we click in to the Marketing Cloud, you'll start to see what bundles are available. Obviously, we know already how that data structure, what data exists in there, and we can, you know, we can bring that data in, and it's pretty straightforward. These two are grayed out, incidentally, because they've already been brought in. At this point, I can choose to bring in mobile push, because that is still awaiting. There's 13 streams, as you can see, awaiting import. And when we get in, we start to get a view as to what those imports look like. And so, you know, there will be lots of different types of data. So delivery information, any Einstein information that we've been able to model using the engagement data that we have in Marketing Cloud. You know, lots of different information there. And when you drill down into each one, you get all of the field information. And as part of that import and ingestion process, you can choose not only which of these you want to bring in, but you can choose down to a field level which are relevant for the use cases that you want to run out of the platform. So that's the bundles, but also customers are likely to have data that they've imported themselves into Marketing Cloud. So when it comes to that, we have access to data extensions, and depending on what you have available to you in terms of business units will determine, you know, where you can go to get that data. So effectively, any of the data within the Marketing Cloud ecosystem can be brought in. For the bundles that I talked about, again, this is ease of import. The mapping process and the transformations have already been done because we know and understand that data before you start. With data extensions, there will be a mapping exercise that you would go through as part of the setup. Okay. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but to give you an idea, Salesforce data, I assume you'd already be very familiar with. So accounts, contacts, leads, custom objects, all of those are available within here to bring in to the platform, and again, pre-mapped to that cloud information model. New with this release is the B2C commerce bundle. effectively the B2C commerce streams. And so in there, you have all sorts of information at the moment relative to purchases, so transactions, as well as the product catalog, to help marketers make sense of all of those purchases in against the business context of what they've been purchasing. And again, all of that is pre-mapped. So anything up here is pretty much pre-mapped. We also then, new for this release is the ingestion API. In truth, this was already available. It just wasn't really documented, but it was already available. So now that we've actually published this properly, and I think there was a lot of work going on in the background with beta customers and beta testers that was helping us to refine how that ingestion API works. Of course, then there's the other sources. So traditionally, we started off with Amazon S3. We've extended that with this release to Google Cloud Storage, and we've also added in the Mulesoft connector. So any of your customers that are already using Mulesoft, this is a really fantastic development, because this is going to enable you to get data from a lot of those really old legacy systems that Mulesoft is so good at working with, and just allow us to bring that into the modern day in something like CDP. Okay, I don't know, Jimson, if there are any questions at this point before I move on. While I'm in the platform.
No, I don't see any questions. So I think everyone understands everything and they get everything here. So all is good.
Perfect. So that's effectively just a quick look at some of those bundles. I'll jump back into the platform now, and we'll move on to the roadmap section. So this is actually a quick look at what the winter release brought with it this time. So first bit that I talked about there was these the new connectors, so Commerce Cloud, and being able to leverage Mulesoft, as well as some of the more web based information that we have within the Customer 360 suite. So from things like Interaction Studio, effectively the ability to run calculated insights. So you already had that capability within customer within the CDP, but we've extended that now. So and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. We've put a little bit more in terms of the transformation, so fuzzy matching, and extending the capabilities within the platform to identify records that are coming from different sources. We've added things like Einstein engagement scores from Marketing Cloud, which wasn't previously available, and the ability to get Tableau data, or data into Tableau, I should say, and then adding things like Google Cloud and more capabilities for the AppExchange. So we're going to just take a quick look at some of these. So in a nutshell, this is the overview of all of those new bits that have come out here. So we have like I say, the data streams and the connectors, and then also the insights. And on the usability side, we've added, in addition to those calculated insights, we've also added the Profile Explorer. So this is something that was obviously missing originally, but the ability to look at a single contact record and view all of the captured information that you have in the CDP for a specific record. And again, this is now something that will be live as part of this new release. So starting off then with the ingestion API, this, like I say, was available, but in the background wasn't really documented. And so this is, very, very fast way of getting data into the platform via the API. So not having to use things like Amazon S3 buckets like we were doing previously, and the ability to do that at scale with bulk data. And now we've also added in the ability to delete records using the API, which is something that a lot of customers were asking for. As I talked about Mulesoft, so the ability to connect data from any source, but primarily those real legacy sources, and that is where customers have the most difficulty. So I think the Mulesoft in those big organizations, the Mulesoft connector is actually something that is going to be really key for that type of customer. And as we know that those legacy systems are very, very difficult to deal with. So this just makes life so much easier. We have the Profile Explorer that I've just talked about. A sort of built-in dashboard, if you like, to be able to view all of the information relevant to an individual contact record. And this will be available to all customers. Once you have access to the CDP app, I think you also have to have the permission to access Data Explorer at the moment to be able to do that. So just something to bear in mind, that when people want to be able to view those profiles, there will be a permission that's required. And interestingly, we have this this dashboard can be added into the wider Salesforce ecosystem. So in sales and service, for example, where for example, a service agent would want to see all of that marketing data within their service environment. If truth be told, they can already do that to a certain degree within Service Cloud, because that capability already exists. But this undoubtedly will give them a slightly different view to what is available, because there will almost certainly be data that is outside of Service Cloud that will be available within this particular view. On the calculated insights, so there's two parts to this. So the first one is, we've added a clicks not code way of doing it. So it looks like the workflow builder for those of you that are familiar with that, but effectively this is a new way to be able to do this and build these calculated insights without having to write SQL, through a nice user interface. And then we can now build metrics on metrics. So we can build our own engagement scores, customer health scores, and even things like attribution scores. And previously, you didn't have the option of creating things like buckets, but we've now added that sort of capability into that. Okay, come back onto here. In terms of that's not so I think I've just talked about that actually. So the sort of the basic calculated insights that we had, we've now gone a little bit further than that, to do things like bucketing and so on, and now being able to use things like affinities from Interaction Studio, and so on as well. Okay, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything I had. So I don't know if there are any questions at this point. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and I'll hand you back to Jimson.
Hey, thank you, Owen. That was very, very nice, comprehensive overview. You can stop sharing your screen so we can see each other better. I don't see any questions here, so I guess either everyone got what you said. I've worked, as you know, worked on a CDP project already, and along with help with Stefan as well. So I got a couple of questions which I can ask. I sort of know the answer to, but I think some people may want to know the question or answer because they're too shy, or they're not really, haven't worked with the product as well. So the first question is, I think some of us here are very senior marketing cloud consultants here. So we know the headaches involved with the multi-cloud environments. You have 2 or 3 Salesforce orgs, and you got to break it up and have a ticket for marketing cloud support so you can enable multi-cloud. Can you confirm that CDP supports multiple Salesforce CRM instances?
Multiple Salesforce CRM instances, absolutely. So, it is obviously it's tied to an org, but you can get data in from other orgs. So it is sort of standalone in that respect. The one thing I would say to be careful with is something that's not available in the product today. It is on the roadmap, and it is something that we hope to bring in, in the sort of medium term. So I think it's from June next year onwards, is the ability to segregate data within the CDP. So that's not possible today. So if you think you want to break down by brand or by geography, or by line of business, that today is not possible. So once the data is in there, you'll have to manually segment against the source of the data to be able to work within your own brand. So that's something just to be aware of, or within your own geography and so on.
But in theory, you can connect multiple CRM cores, which is good, because if you're running like a sandbox, or if you're running like Salesforce to Salesforce, you have an acquisition and you buy another company with Salesforce, you could add that in and it would just connect seamlessly, right? So that's a good news for those who are doing pre-sales. You can actually do that. Okay, so for those doing like pre-sales, here's kind of like my high-level simplicity of what CDP is, and correct me if I'm wrong, help me tune my elevator pitch. So for me, CDP is kind of like two products. You have the audience builder replacement, because you can't buy audience builder anymore. Anybody trying to buy Marketing Cloud now, there's no audience builder. So you have to use CDP for audience builder. And it's kind of similar look and feel, right? Drag and drop segments and/or statements. So that's kind of good. And for those who worked on MDM projects like Informatica or Clear MDM, those products, this is the identity resolution part of it. If you go to identity resolution and you start doing your rules, to me that looks and smells like Informatica. I don't know, that's from my point of view. So I think in a nutshell, CDP covers those two products really well. It does your audience builder lookalike, and it does your MDM feature. Is that fair to say to a customer?
Yeah. One thing for people who are familiar with Audience Builder, this is not a straight replacement for everything that Audience Builder does today. It's obviously much more flexible. Anybody who's worked with Audience Builder knows it's not simple really to get it set up, and that needs a lot of work and sometimes a lot of cost on our side to be able to set that up. I know that they sort of move towards a self-service, but it is what it is. So in that sense, CDP is a breath of fresh air, but Audience Builder still had some things like waterfall segmentation that was built into it, which currently is not available within CDP. So it's not a like for like end user experience at the moment. Again, I believe that waterfall is on the roadmap in the medium term, which effectively is from June next year onwards.
Okay, great.
I'm not 100% on that date. That may come sooner, but it's certainly not in there today.
Okay, perfect. No other questions, so I'll keep on going then. So I guess one thing we talked about before we let people in was the whole Profile Explorer. We can't demo that today because it just got released this weekend. So I think for those who have CDP, your only choice of doing single customer view is writing SOCL statements, query API, and pulling it in. But today now we have Profile Explorer. It's a shame that we can't demo it because I think the instance of NTO doesn't have Profile Explorer.
So we have it in there actually, and I sort of have had a bit of a play with it.
Yeah.
I think initially it doesn't look that exciting because it's just a lightning page with all of the data grouped together. But I think you can add in at that point things like dashboards and so on to make it more exciting. That hasn't been done in NTO yet as a pre-release, as we're still in pre-release, but I would expect that to come afterwards, and I would expect the SDOs and things like that to be able to show those dashboards and that profile information within sales and service at some point. Again, there's always a slight delay between the feature becoming available and the demo asset being built and available. So I would expect to see that done in the next quarter.
Okay, I think one of the features that CDP does is that you have your activation targets. Like, you don't have to have your output from your segment go to Marketing Cloud.
Absolutely.
Most of us here are using Marketing Cloud, and we expect the segment to output. But the thing is, a lot of the power of it is that you can actually export it to Amazon S3 or an FTP site. Yeah. So I think for those looking at CDP, like Owen said, it's not just audience builder. It's more. It's like a two-way street where it ingests data and output data, and I think you can really get some really wonderful use cases.
Just on that, Jimson, we have obviously the pre-built connectors that at the moment allow you to get data back into the. It's similar to the import and ingestion where we have those pre-built connectors available. We have the same outbound, which enables you to push the data back. And in those instances, worth pointing out that we manage that identity. So we store all of those IDs that come in from those different sources. And when we push the data back, we push the data back using the ID that system would understand. But we also have the ability to push personalization attributes. So effectively enriching that database with information that's coming from from the single source of truth. And then for those where we don't have a connector, like you say, there's Amazon that we have, but there's also the API, so it can now be queried after this release. It can now be queried to get data into systems where you want to do that perhaps on a more real-time basis, or effectively being able to just pull that data into another system.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any Microsoft shops here, but anybody who has Azure Data Factory, it's really wonderful. I'm working on a project where we have that, and I can't believe how powerful that is. So the Azure Data Factory, along with CDP, you can really extract your data, query your data. So that's something else that you can think out of the box. A lot of us want to be architects these days, right? But unless you actually get exposure to these big systems, you're just dealing with like 5-user Salesforce core licenses. So not very exciting, but I think there's a lot of CDP that you can do, but you just have to ask the right questions. So that's one thing I noticed with it. Any other questions? No other questions here. I think we're having a two-way conversation, Owen. Anybody have questions for Owen or myself or about CDP? Other than costs, we don't talk about costs. We're not allowed to. That's your AE that talks about it. Anybody with a question here?
Yeah. People can unmute themselves if they want to ask any questions, or really just give any feedback in the chat about anything that you saw that was interesting.
And not an actual cost topic of conversation, but a licensing model topic of conversation. People should be aware that for existing Marketing Cloud customers, when they move to CDP, it does change the licensing model that a customer would be signing up to. So we're moving away from platform license cost and looking at contacts to effectively something called profiles, which may on the face of it seem like it's the same thing, but it actually is quite different. So that there are some things to be aware of when it comes to moving somebody onto CDP. But it would be a topic for another day to get into the detail on that.
Yeah, I think anybody who has a project and you're working with large volume of transactional data, I think CDP is the answer. Obviously, you keep your CRM data in Sales Cloud, But let's say you're like John Lewis or Aldi or Sainsbury, and you got tons and giga blobs of transactional data, or in this case, it's engagement data, right, for CDP. So instead of filling up your, your marketing cloud data extensions, you just put in CDP and let it handle it. And you don't even need to keep it in marketing cloud. You can use Amazon S3. You don't have to, burn up all your usage. So it's quite powerful. And like I said, I think it's the first in-house product that Salesforce built. They didn't acquire, like Slack they acquired, Marketing Cloud they acquired. I believe CDP was built ground up.
CDP is entirely built in-house. Yeah. It's been built from the ground up. I say that, but obviously we did acquire certain technology. So people familiar with Datarama, it has quite, a market-leading database structure. So we did incorporate elements where we had market-leading technology, built into the platforms that we've acquired. We haven't just rebuilt that or redone it. We've used, in some ways we bought that technology, but not just because we wanted to have Datarama, within the stack, because that technology is also useful to things like this. So I think between there's elements of Interaction Studio, so what was Evergage, and elements of Datarama that have been built into this platform. But the difference where it differs from messaging and journeys, for example, is that it's built straight onto Hyperforce.
Yeah.
So it's Hyperforce ready, and as probably people are aware, we're slowly but surely moving messaging and journeys, Interaction Studio onto Hyperforce as well, and that's sort of very squarely on the roadmap at the moment. So
yeah, for the Hyperforce, just go back to Dreamforce talks, and there was a couple of sessions on that. If you missed that in September. Okay, any other questions? Last question, Mick, if I can ask. I think anyone here who works in Marketing Cloud has worked with Google as their analytics platform. Can you talk maybe briefly about the integration with Google Analytics and CDP? Is there anything groundbreaking?
So I can't talk in any great detail about it. I'm not fully versed myself in it at the moment. But what I do know is that obviously a large number of our customers use Google as their main source. So we were having to use Amazon connectors for to get Google data in, and that wasn't really an ideal scenario for customers. So what we've done is similarly to the Marketing Cloud connector and so on for the the S3 connector, is we've given the ability to authenticate directly against Google, so that you have access to data that you've made available in Google, and then you'll have to go through the mapping process as you would with any non-connector data source. But we effectively it's about getting data in and out into Google. So it's a sort of two-way connector, I guess, if you like, at the moment.
Okay, there's one question that came in from the chat. If you can look at it, I can read it out to you too. He says, are there plans to use the individual ID as contact key in Marketing Cloud instead of contact and lead ID? Good question. Also named Jim. Jimson.
So that is a good question. In short, I don't believe that to be the case. Certainly not at the moment. So until Marketing Cloud is re-platformed, I don't think it will be possible to do it any other way. So for any new data that goes into Marketing Cloud, it's possible to choose what the ID and the primary key for that contact will be. For any data that's in there, it's quite a big job to re-identify and change all of that information over for your customers with and keeping all of the engagement data and so on. It can be done, but it's not an easy process. So obviously, I think once we start to re-platform, and Marketing Cloud, sorry, Messaging and Journeys sits effectively side by side with CDP on Hyperforce, then that's a key topic of conversation. I would say that's exactly the sort of conversations we'd be having, and I'm sure that is the direction of it. At the moment, like I say, if for a fresh Marketing Cloud instance, you can choose what you use. So if you're pushing your data in from the beginning into Marketing Cloud from CDP, then that effectively would be what you use. The difficulty and the complexity is for existing data, right? So
we can talk about subscriber key migrations and all that stuff later, but I think we're out of time. Carrie, you want to on the hour?
We are absolutely just on the hour, which is great timing. It's like it was maybe rehearsed and planned.
Yeah.
You never know, something like that. So thank you, Owen, very much for joining us for this particular session. That's been very informative, and thank you for being open to answer questions and also talk to us about what's actually coming up in this most recent release. Hopefully everybody found that useful, and we had quite a lot of people stay. So even though we didn't get questions, people stayed and hang around for all the answers towards the end. We will be making this recording available on our YouTube channel, and hopefully we will also see you next month on the 11th of November. But I think
as well, and there is a user group, a Trailblazer group for us as well. So if you haven't joined, please join that. Ask your questions there. Carrie and I are both active on that, so we can ask you questions. And if we don't know the answer, we'll just point you to the right place. Other than that, again, Owen, thanks again for, let's not wait 5 years to see each other again. And I'm sure we'll bump into each other in the Salesforce world. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Carrie, again, and hope to see everyone next month.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Thank you.